So we've provided some structure and tools to simplify your succession process, and hopefully we've taken a little bit of the intimidation factor out of succession by adding that structure and giving you some tools. But it's an important point to note that we're not done yet. One very important thing that very few organizations, even those with a seemingly mature succession process, do not do well is measuring and communicating that progress. It's critical for succession planning. Frankly, any leadership development, HR, any initiative that you're doing to demonstrate value on an ongoing basis. This is going to make it easier to justify your budget when you're asking for more budget, and essentially, even more importantly, when you're asking for executives' time. Because I think you're going to ask them to invest their time in this process, and I think you need to demonstrate value to both them and the organization. And we do this essentially with our talent progress scorecard. Essentially looking for ways to measure value and communicate it in a way that makes sense and is meaningful to the entire organization. So a few of those things that are, I think, really critical to measure are those critical positions that are filled internally, management positions that are filled internally. Those obviously go hand in hand. If you have the data, if you understand what it costs the organization to hire somebody externally, connect that with your data. Obviously, it's very powerful to say from this year to last, we've actually increased the number of positions that we were able to fill internally by 30%. That's very, very powerful. What's even more powerful is we've increased those positions by 30%. We've actually saved the organization $275,000. So if you can connect the trend with an actual dollar value, that's going to have a significant impact in the credibility of your process. So very, very important. The next two pieces are average time your high potentials are in the same role and your high potential turnover. And it shouldn't really be a surprise that these are very highly correlated, so very closely related to each other. Your high potentials, typically speaking, are going to be more driven. They're going to give more, but they're also going to ask more from their role. So generally speaking, if high potentials are in a role for too long, and too long can be very different depending on that high potential, what happens is they start to look elsewhere. So if you're seeing a very high number of high potentials that are in the same role for a long period of time, you're likely going to see a very similar trend in high potentials leaving the organization. And that's very, very important. Again, from a cost perspective, if certain roles have a high training cost, attach that cost to your percentages. But essentially, we want these numbers to go down. So if average time hypos are in the same role has been 5.7 years, we obviously want to set goals and move that, and move those numbers lower and attach any dollar figure that we can. The next piece is those critical positions. As I said earlier, from a best practice standpoint or from a gold standard, we want in an ideal world to have at least 3 successors for every role. So we would identify all of our critical positions and essentially have how many of those positions have at least 3 plus successors. That's where we want to get to. As I said, have reasonable expectations and communicate reasonable expectations with this data. But that's where we want to get to, and that's what your leadership development processes are going to do. The next piece, and also closely related as well, is average years till individuals are ready. If we look at our talent bench today, and especially, for example, a smaller organization with maybe a younger staff, may have the average time to ready everybody be over 5 years. So obviously we want that average time to be a little more reasonable and a little more closer to a 3-year time frame. And finally with this, so these are just some examples of what you can measure, what you can communicate. What I would ask you to do if you take nothing else from the webinar is look at what you can measure easily today, identify those numbers, and essentially set a calendar date to measure them again 6 months from now, a year from now. Get in the habit, even if it's only one metric, get in the habit of looking for measurement and looking for ways to attach it to value and communicate it to your management team. So measuring and communicating early and often will ensure that you get the executive commitment and the resources that you need to expand the process. As I said, the focus of this is we want to start with one. We want to start small, have some early successes, communicate that value to the executive management team, and then we have data to support the investment in launching this across the organization. And that's going to both give the perception of success, which is important, but will also ensure that the process has success and the process continues to deliver value to the organization.